says, I think get this thing put that down. It's all. Thank you.
It's quiet though.
Is it quiet?
Eat the mic.
Okay, so, board, thank you for coming tonight, and community, we appreciate this. This is work that we worked on from last board meeting, to come together with enough time to talk about the plans of, to this point in time, and just, try to have enough time for information, to gather everything we can for you guys to go forward as decisions are made and whatnot. Just an FYI, the whole meeting. This is a board meeting that's being recorded. It was opened, it was advertised correctly, and it is the way board meetings work. It's like city council meetings and county commissioner meetings. They're meetings for the board to work and to talk back and forth, and for the public to be there and to watch the government in action, but it's not a two-way back and forth type of meeting. This is not a community meeting. This is a board meeting. So it's probably up to the board if they want to talk to anyone, but in general, we've always been advised to just have the board meeting here, and you're allowed to listen and hear everything that's discussed by the board. So I'm Superintendent Carlson. I'm sure most of you know that. I have two incredible assistants and a business administrator there. Heidi Jo West over the elementary school, and Keith Meekum is Keith Meekum is the assistant superintendent over the secondary schools, and then Neil Stevens is our business administrator. And we also meet, if not 2 or 3 times a week, but at the very least once a week, and this is a lot of our discussion lately has been what we want to do with our facilities. And we generally have in our leadership team our executive director over human resources, and that's Karina Fife, and right now she's on her way back from Utah State where they're having a job fair today. And I think, have you guys both been there? They just left there and flew over there. All the Utah State graduates come and talk to them, and they come and we get to interview them, and we get a pool of teachers so that we can end up hiring the best teachers we possibly can for our students. Then we also have our executive director over special education, part of the Box Elder leadership team. You may or may not know this, but we have about 18% of our students that have some form of an IEP, and so we feel like so many of the things that go on are special education related, so we wanted to have her in that meeting. And so we meet, and my ever so humble, however great and hardworking and knowledgeable people, we've developed a PowerPoint tonight for the board to be able to try to get all the information. We're trying to encapsulate what's happened even for the last, since November 24, about 18, 19 months. My shooting kind of in the general area, maybe not quite that many, but certainly the last year and a few months. So, and try to get to this point in time where we're at right now and how we want to proceed and go forward. And when I say we, generally it's the board's decision with our, our advisement the best that we can. So with that, I think, who does start the presentation? Is it Neil? Okay, so you've got.
Can you put the lapel on as well? That won't help the room, but it helps the 12 people that are watching outside.
Can you hear me, Robert?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. This first slide is to set the table for the discussion for the rest of the night. Our 2 largest funds that we operate out of are the general fund and the capital fund. The general fund pays daily maintenance and operation. Think of teacher salaries of maintenance staff, custodians, bus drivers, operations of buses. The capital fund is where we use to purchase long-lived assets. So that's assets that have a life of 1 year or greater, and also have a value of $2,500 or greater at the purchase price. So when we have to do large maintenance items such as replacing an air conditioner, a sewer, this is where we draw those funds from. In addition to any construction we have to do, remodels of offices, additions to offices, that's where the money comes from. Additionally, over time we use this fund to build different buildings across the district. Think of the transportation park building was built with this fund, Sunrise High School was built with this fund, portion of Golden Spike Elementary is also used from the capital fund. So these are our two largest funds. Now the general fund, the majority of that is funded from state appropriations, what we call the MSP program, minimum school program, and local property taxes, which are comprised of the basic levy, which is controlled by the state legislature. They set the rate and amount every year. Then also the board levy, which our board sets every year, and the amount we collect, and the voter levy. Those, and also federal funds. All those four funding sources make up the general fund. The capital fund is made solely up of our capital outlay levy from property taxes. We don't receive any state funding there. We don't receive any federal funding to build buildings. The exception to that is whenever there's a big economic crisis, the federal government will allocate funds that we can use for those purposes. In fact, in 2008, we had the American Recovery Act from ARA. We had RO funds that came in the district to help build a portion of this building. Also during COVID, we had COVID relief funds, about 4 different tranches of funding that we ended up using to help with air conditioning and other facility needs related to COVID. But generally, the capital fund is made up only of local property tax dollars. And we raised and lowered that rate throughout the years. Last year, we raised it to accommodate for bond payments on a reduced revenue bond to build our schools that we're in the process of planning. That will be the main topic of discussion tonight. Last thing here is we have a bond fund. General obligation bond has been approved by the voters in 2008 as a dedicated tax line. It's not part of any of the levies. We only collect the amount necessary to pay for the bond payment. Each year, this administrator, must send to the state tax commission and the county auditor the scheduled payments for our bond. And they have to approve the amount that goes in our tax rate. And that's approved also by the county and also by the state tax commission. So we don't collect any more than we're required to for that year's payment.
Would you just clarify that?
Sure.
And just to make sure, because there's the bond, which is the general obligation bond. This is the one that the people see on their tax returns.
That's right.
And this is the first year that they've ever, the county and or the state has ever had that as a separate line item, correct?
Yes, every year there's a variety of property tax legislation to clarify various aspects of the property tax program. Not every county has a slate that uses different line items differently. I happen to live in Weaver County, and Weaver County, each line item is broken out. In our county, in Pocatello County, in past years, it's all been in one lump sum, one rate. And so the residents weren't easily able to identify the different line items. So this past year, the general obligation bond was broken out on the property taxes. So there's additional line item this year that wasn't there last year. It makes it kind of hard to compare rates over the years without getting into the details or knowing where to look at that information, because the property tax laws wasn't as transparent as it could have been. They're moving towards that because of legislation and guidance from the state tax commission.
And that payment is going for the 2 high school remodels clear back in 2008, 9?
Yeah, well before my time here, I realized superintendent given the history here, but back at that time period when we voted on that particular bond.
Thank you.
30 is our last payment, 23 is our last payment. It's a half payment, about $1.6 million. Any other questions from the board? Okay, great.
So no last payment, though, everybody should be able to see that on their line item, that it will go down.
It'll come down, so.
From what it has been.
Yeah, so so our payments are due, we have an interest payment in June and one in July. So the prior June, I'll submit the rate information to the state tax commission. They'll approve our rate. That'll be our last collection. And so we'll make a interest payment in January following so in June of 29, I send information to the state tax commission. And then in January of 30, we make an interest payment. And then June of 30, we make our final payment, and then we're done with that. But yes, that amount will be clear on the taxes. You'll see a reduction there. Here we have the capital outlay expense detail. This is consistent with the the budget that was approved this past year by the board. And this is directly from our documentation we provided the board, our how the budget looked. It was available online starting in May and is still online now. So we have here, architect and design fees. These are the fees that we pay to our architects and our, what we call CNBC, construction and general contractors. These contracts were procured through the state procurement process, competitive bid, we selected through a committee to design our 2 high schools, our 2 high school extensions rather. That's the approximate amount that we, based on the estimated budget at the time. As we go through designing schools, that budget goes up and down as the contractors are making estimates. So in June, we estimated to be about $4.6 million cost to design and engineer the schools to get to the point where they're ready to go have a contractor start the process. Next, we have technology purchases. Throughout the years, we are always refreshing technology that becomes obsolete or becomes end of life. And we budgeted about $2.7 million for those technology issues or purchases this year. Capital improvement plans, so this is our facility upgrade or facility maintenance rather. So we're not adding things to this, but we're maintaining our current facilities. An example of that is the fly-in rigs at our auditoriums that are very old, that are really building. They have asbestos in them, and they are, some of them have deteriorated to the point where they pose a safety risk. So part of the budget is we are going to replace those. So the capital facilities committee meets yearly, looks at the needs, we rank where the highest need is, and we develop a budget of what we're going to work on for this year. So that's at $3.8 million.
Now, that was approved the last board meeting.
Well, this one right here is the one that was approved last February 25.
Thank you.
They meet yearly? No.
We meet throughout the year. We meet at least like November, we start gathering information with the facility director Corey Harrison, our small construction manager, WA, with our maintenance staff to gather a list of critical projects. We meet in February, we hammer out a list, try to narrow it down, come up on the budget, then we present it to the board like we did last month for approval of that budget for the next upcoming year.
That was that list with the high, low, medium, okay. So
I
that
just
is
thought
higher
you guys
list.
more than a year, once a year.
Yes, yes.
So, 2 years, yeah.
Well, we establish the budget once a year going into the next year.
Then we get an update about 6 months later, get an update from Corey about how those projects are going and what's been completed and what's still on the road. Right, or, yeah, new things that
Yes. Next, we have school buses. So as our school buses age and become end of life, or they became more costly to maintain than we think they're worth in residual value, we'll send them to an auction, we'll get funds for those, we'll also replace them with a new school bus. And so this past year, we dedicated about $1.5 million to purchase new school buses. School buses, depending on size, range from $60,000, $70,000 for a small 24-passenger bus to several $100,000 for a 75-passenger bus, or what we call trip buses that we travel along longer distances with. They have space for the luggage and things like that. Depending on the size of the bus, the cost will go up and down, but this is what we budgeted for this current year. School furniture, so we replace equipment or tables, chairs, desks in the school as needed, and also in the various offices. If we get a new principal or we add staff in an area, we need to provide them with desks and furniture to operate and do their job. So this is that budget that we use here. We also budgeted a fund for portables. We've been budgeting funds each year for portables, for portable construction, for moving portables, and for those things. We usually assess the need for portables for the upcoming school year now. So this was the budget we assessed last year. Corey, how many portables did we have last year, or we move around? Remember?
We moved,
Building, North Park, 2.
we moved 4, but we rearranged everything on it.
Yeah. So in doing so, we had to meet fire code, we had to move some things around, and it was more costly to move last year. And usually we try and start those in June, but we know that it won't be finished until July or August, so we had some budget to cover those costs in the new fiscal year.
Neil, if I could interrupt right there on portables. We have a couple of white ways to get portables. You can look out at other districts,
Correct.
get them shipped here, and, but there's more to just moving the portable. And our DWA folks we work with, Wayne Anderson and Steve Bob here, and I'd like to have them talk a little bit about, and Corey sitting here with us, talk a little bit about
Great idea.
portables and how much they're costing and, you know, the advantage of building on site versus moving them and not just the fact that there's a portable, you have to get electricity to them. Would one of you two gentlemen, and even Corey, let me here, you have to have two hands, because we got two systems. You have two systems.
Yeah, I'll just start it by prefacing portable classrooms. The typical size is 28 by 32, and it really is a temporary solution, not a long-term fix. It's not the greatest environment for the kiddos that are going to be in there learning. It's detached from the main building. Anytime they have to use the restroom, they're leaving the portable, going into the main building if they need to go to a different class or any other kind of support. They're not part of that main building and main student body. And so there are situations that people say, oh yeah, this portable is really nice. It's really nice to, it might be newer, it's gonna have air conditioning. So there are some that would say there's some benefits to it, but overall, it is a short-term solution. It's difficult to make it a long-term solution because it provides a classroom space, but it does not include the restroom capability of the building. It overtaxes the prep spaces, so if you have PE, now we have a lot more students than what that building was designed for. And so it really does overtax the infrastructure, the cafeteria, everything about that. So just as we start talking about portables, we have a lot of them in the district, and they work, but only with a lot of accommodations. We even have some schools that their PE classes, they don't have room in the gym to provide PE for all the classes, so they end up in a portable or something. It's just, yeah, it's a short-term Band-Aid for it. And so,
Corey,
Yes.
how do our kids get in and out of the building? Like, what do they have to take with them? Because the building's locked, or should be locked.
right, the buildings are locked down by state security code. So we issue a card reader, or we issue a key card on a lanyard, and that is their hall pass. So they leave the portable, walk across the playground or wherever it's at, and they have to card into the main building to go in and use the restroom or to go in to receive educational support for something else. The teacher's going to have a key card if they're going to lunch or to a prep, but that's how we deal with individual students going into the school. We've also been in situations where the electrical service at a building is not sufficient for the additional portables that we're bringing in. We've seen this several places. North Park is a prime example that we had to bring in extra electrical service and panels. Was it last year or 2 years ago? So that's an increased expense. Anyway, yeah, Lakeview last year we had to do a new panel because of some upgrades we had to do to the portables at the same time. Last year was unique in that when we rearranged all the portables, we actually had to do it with a crane from Wagstaff, just because it's such a tight lot. In the end, it's a better situation as far as portables go, but in the end, they're still portables, and they still overtax the infrastructure of a building. As far as cost, we prefer to put them on asphalt, but then that eats up play space for the students. So then we put them out on the grass, but portable on a grass is not a good situation. It's a terrible idea. We have it in a couple of places, and the portables just settle and sink into the ground. So we need to build some kind of a pad to put the portables on, and I'll let Wayne and Shane kind of talk prices. As far as purchasing used portables, if we can find them, it is approximately $10,000 to move one portable within our county. If we start bringing them from Salt Lake, the price is going to go up. That's just to move one portable into place. That doesn't include all of this other stuff that we need in order to hook up that portable and have it ready to go for school. So, cost-wise,
How many total portables do you have?
oh, I'd have to look on the fact sheet. We've got like 30, 32,
Overall, including secondary, is 40 total.
40
40
total.
total
Okay.
portables,
And one requested furnished.
correct?
Maybe more?
Maybe more. We were gonna talk about those a little bit later on in the slide. Don't wanna get in the weeds there.
Go ahead and talk.
Do you want me to wait until, or do you want me to do the cost right now?
Yeah.
So what we've seen with your last portables, a single classroom portable, the cost of the portable itself has been right around $220,000. It's a little cheaper than that, but I'm kind of putting some inflationary number in that for this year. On the double portable, which is a 2-classroom portable, they are about $340,000 to construct those. Now that number is just the building alone. That doesn't include the pad for it or whatever we have to do to get the electricity out to it. One misconception with portables, people think, well, we can build them cheaper than that. We build houses cheaper than that, but they misconstrue the name portable. We have to make it so it can be moved, so they're actually much more rigid. If you had a tornado come along, they would just bounce across the ground and not fall apart. So there's a lot more into those.
They are anchored.
We do anchor them, yes. You're ruining it. So, and this is the, yeah, they are safe, but this is the design that the district has settled on that we use. One thing that I would also like to point out too is that when we put these out for pricing, we have to follow state procurement code just like everybody else. And so they're advertised, and anybody can bid on them, and if they're the low bidder and they can meet the requirements, they're allowed to do that. But that's about where you are for this year if you're doing portables. Obviously, the double portable is a better value. You get more out of it for less money than if you built 2 singles.
How does a double portable work? Like when you say it can fit 2 classrooms, is there
Yep.
2 doors and everything?
Yep, there's 2 doors, there's a dividing wall that's,
But it's still.
yeah, it's actually insulated, it's a double wall, so sound doesn't transfer. But yep, you can put 2 classrooms in, and they are 28 by 64. So you just double the size of the single portable.
Are they easier to sell?
What I've found with portables is by the time you want to sell them, they're not worth selling. So to go on with what Corey was talking about, getting them from other districts, if we bring them out of Salt Lake, the mover, his price to move them is somewhere in $30,000 to $38,000 to get them up here from Salt Lake. A lot of that is permits, highway patrol, escorts. You have to do it on Sundays. They won't let you go down the road any other day of the week. You have to do it between 9 and 3, so it usually takes multiple days to get them here. They can't go over 35 miles an hour when they're moving them. So there is more to it. Then when you get them here, there's always fixes that you have to do, because the districts, the ones they're getting rid of, they've seen their lifespan used up. And that's just most of the districts that are selling them or giving them away. It's because they're basically junk, for lack of a better.
For example, Carbon School District is giving theirs away. If you will come get them, they'll give them to you.
Yep, exactly. So there's more cost than just the moving of the portable is what I'm saying. But some of the electrical infrastructure that we have to do, some of that to get new panels in the school and actually get power out to the portables, I've seen that go as high as $90,000 just for one portable. So that's where you see a lot of the cost, is just getting the infrastructure to the portable. The cost of the portables pretty well stay the
Talk
same.
about problems we've had with propane and why we're going electric, please.
Sure. Corey, do you want to?
So just to preface Wayne's experience with building these portables, Cash, DWA's built a lot of portable classrooms. Cash, us, where else? What other districts? Logan District. And this is actually how we rebuilt Grass Creek Elementary. And anybody that's lucky enough to travel out to Grass Creek, you drive past the school and you would never know that it was built in Tremont as modular boxes and taken out there. These are really quality. Okay, I got sidetracked. Sorry, propane. So what we have found is when we most of our portables, they've all been propane heat. Our issue with that is we have lost educational time because those propane tanks will vent the gas, and so it has been uncomfortable in these portable classrooms, especially because they're close together. So we have made a concerted effort and started the process of converting these portables from propane to electric. Lakeview, Heidi Jo maybe could speak to this. I think it was last year or the year before, Lakeview, some of those classrooms lost several days of classroom use because of that venting. It took us that much time to get AmeriGas and the fire marshal to work through that issue so that we did not have that odor within the classroom so that the students could go back in there. We had to relocate them to gym spaces, stages, and it was really inconvenient and a true disruption to education. And that's why we felt like it was worth making that transition to electric. And everything that we built in the past few years, and I think everything that Cash has built, it's just been electric. It's just a cleaner, better educational environment for the students. I don't have the exact billing, but it is more. Obviously, for electric, it is going to be more. We don't do it for the return on investment. We do it because it's a better educational environment for the kids. We don't lose educational time. If the power goes out, well, we're going to lose the heat, but if you have a propane, you'll still lose heat because it's just like your furnace at home. The fan won't blow. And the propane won't ignite. And so electric, whether you lose service or not, you're going to lose that service into that classroom either way. So that's why we determined it was worth the cost to make that transition over. We haven't transitioned all of our portables that were propane over to electric. Just we took a certain amount of money. I'd have to look it up, but
I think it's about $25,000 per portable to change over from propane to electric. I think that the cost of service is probably about the same in the end because AmeriGas owns the tank, so we have to have AmeriGas come fill them, so they have proprietary service rights on those tanks and the service fee and all that. By the time you add it up, it's about the same cost as electric.
The heaters, the electric is a little more expensive than the gas. Up front, I would say you're probably at least another $1,000 for the electric heater versus the the propane heater. As far as the service to the portable, you're still running electricity to the portable anyway. The heater is usually, when you turn it to an electric heater, it usually takes anywhere from, depending on the distance, a 30 amp to 50 amp breaker is what you're adding to the panel. Most of the portables will run, when we build them, we design them for a 100 amp panel. Most of them can run on 60 amps throughout the year.
Do you have any questions from the board?
How many of the portables have we done change over?
So we did changeovers at North Park, Lakeview, Discovery, McKinley. So North Park and McKinley still have some portables that are propane, but we've started making that changeover in those areas. Fielding, that one is electric now. They only have one, so it made sense to change that one over to electric instead of bringing a propane tank in there. So we've tried to be strategic at the same time when we've decided which ones to change over.
The middle school is still different.
So Bear River Middle's been changed over.
Do you have any questions on portables right now?
Yes, I have one. I'm curious on the pullouts, like they do interventions, right, in elementary? Are they able to do that with them, like how, do they pull them out and put them back in the school to do the pullouts, or do they do them in the classrooms?
Are you referring to prep times?
No, oh yeah, because there's the prep times. No, I was talking more like reading interventions, like they have the reading groups, and they have a lot of group stuff. Do they do that in the class, or do they take them into the school?
Yes, as much as we can, and that's a viable option in most cases to say like at this time, second grade is doing their reading intervention time. And so when second grade is doing their reading intervention time, they pull the students to as many places as they can. So teachers can run a couple of groups in their classroom, and then we have them in the hallways, in the kivas. Kiva spaces are available. Those common spaces at like 3 Mile Creek, Fielding, and Garland Elementary have those options. They also, some of the buildings have to have an intervention room where they can pull 4 or 5 groups of students. It really kind of depends on the small group instruction because like our resource runs all day long, so they couldn't do that in a classroom. They have to have a set aside dedicated classroom for that.
So Neil, we've heard a lot of advantages to, or disadvantages of a portable as a short-term solution, but have you evaluated, compared, so we've got 40 portables times $500,000 or however much it takes to build them, 40 times $500,000 plus the maintenance and all of the other items. How does that compare to, at some point, you want to just add on to the school so you can eliminate the portable? How does the cost of a portable versus having a school to house all the students compare?
The biggest challenge with portables is it doesn't come with all the other infrastructure. Restrooms, drinking fountains, lunch spaces, PE spaces. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in schools that requires more than just a classroom. And so if you look on just on the cost per classroom, they may be cheaper, but when you add on all the other things, it in the long run, it's not cheaper. You can see in Lakeview the amount of the extra sewage, wastewater that goes through that system, what it's caused, and the additional wear and tear there. We're probably going to incur about another $1 million in retrofitting those sewer pipes to fix them. That probably would have lasted a little bit longer had we had a more reasonable capacity in that school. But that school was over capacity. You throw portables on there to handle that, and it just taxes all the other things. So you have to upgrade those other areas. And I'll use Discovery Elementary as an example. We're working on an expansion design for that school, add another, I think, 200 students. It's going to cost us about $12 million, including a new gym. Well, if you put 12 more classrooms, that's $6 million, but you don't have all the other things to support it. And so it decreases the life of the building, and it decreases the educational experience, because all of a sudden, we're having to have maybe multiple lunch sessions, or we don't have enough space, time to prepare lunch because of the increased capacity there. We don't have an extra gym space for all these students, so we can't hold lunch and a gym session at the same time, so now we're stacking schedules. So it really impacts the educational quality and experience of students by putting them in portables rather than building schools to house them. It's not even to mention school safety. We have a lot of school safety requirements coming up in the next 5 to 7 years that are due because of the legislation that was passed. And portables are really a security hazard and hard to manage. It's not the best thing to send a kid or a student rather, from the portable with the key card to go to the building and use the restroom. Because they're out there, they're vulnerable to whomever may want to have contact with them, good or bad. So we want to try and reduce those risks there. So there's so many different ways that portables aren't the best solution, and this is just kind of the tip of it.
One of the board members asked me to talk a little bit about Lakeview and the restrooms and see where we're at, so I'll ask Corey if you could just update us on that.
So at Lakeview, we have a newer section of classrooms, but the original is 4 pods or quads, we call them, because they each have 4 classrooms. Each of those has a set of restrooms. The northwest quad restrooms are not usable right now because the sewer lines they have issues. And so that set of restrooms is closed, along with the restrooms in the restroom in the office for the sick room, and the staff restrooms by the kitchen are closed, and the kitchen is still able to function as long as all they put down the drain is just straight water. They're able to still function. So we've met with DWA and several options. We have part of that sewer line is accessible to replace the pipe itself with new pipe, because we have sections where the pipe, it's cast iron, it's from 1962, and it's just past its lifespan, and it's broken. And we have portions where gravel is coming into it, but portions of that pipe can be replaced pipe for pipe. Other portions are buried, and so the other option that we can do is line it with a type of epoxy or vinyl bladder that is pushed through there. One company that does it is called Restore. And we DWA's met with a plumber and has some costs just to do the pipe replacement, where we can replace that. Initially, that's looking like it's about $35,000 just for the section that we need to deal with to get those restrooms and kitchen back to fully functioning. And then the other portion that we need to do to get that area functioning is buried, so we'd have to actually do this sewer pipe lining. We met with that contractor today, and he's going to be getting us a cost. So we know that process is a lot more than just replacing pipe for pipe, but it's less than if we have to tear up all the flooring for 160 feet and then repair all of that. So we're still waiting on those costs. Timeline, we're hoping that we can do it before summer. That's the goal, but we've got to see how all of these processes line out. It can be pretty invasive. There's a section in the hallway that they would actually have to excavate. That's pretty tough to do in the middle of school with a bunch of elementary kids that need to walk past there to find a restroom. So what they've done right now, they still have 3 functioning restroom blocks, and one of those they're using for staff, and the other 2 they're using for students. So it's manageable on the short term. It's very inconvenient compared to what they've been dealing with, and that's why we are hoping we can get this taken care of before summertime. But that's kind of the update that we know so far.
What's the lifespan on those ladders, linings?
Actually, as far as I know, they should be able to get just as long as the cast iron has. They're epoxy, basically epoxy coated liner that goes inside of them. So they should last, I would say, 50 years.
Are we gonna have Lakeview now?
What's happening with what's happening with your cast iron is it's actually rusting out. That's,
We saw a video of it.
yeah.
And it's rusting out from the outside and not from the inside out.
Inside out.
It's doing both. The outside in is actually electrolysis happening because of the soils. So the inside out is, well, you know what the inside out is.
My biggest concern is, are those 3 restrooms gonna make it to the end, or are we gonna lose them? I mean, like, at what point are we gonna have to put some kind of porta potties or whatever we call them?
So to answer that, that was part of the conversation today when we met with the contractor, is they're like mapping out where all the sewer lines are, and they want to excavate a portion of the hallway so that they can get a vacuum truck in there and remove that material, because if they try to push it all the way down the line, they will run the chance of causing more issues than we have right now. And at that point, we would lose at least one more restroom block for use. So they're trying to be very cautious about that. We did explore the idea of porta potties for just a moment. That would be a pretty tough way to ask people to go use the restroom. They'd have to be out on the playground. Are we going to get some knucklehead that wants to tip it over, or I don't know. There's just, that's going to be the last resort, we hope, and we hope not to get there. We'd like to try these other options first.
So my understanding is North Park and the Bearver Middle has had sewer issues. So are those, like, we've got
So-
those 4 schools.
Yep.
So is this a line item after this, we get a better feel for what this will cost, and then get that line item into our yearly budget so that every year as schools, one of those 4 schools can be repaired and taken care of?
Correct. Or if not sooner, we have Bearver and Box Elder Middles both have the same age of pipe, as well as North Park and Lakeview. And in all 4 of those situations, we have a combination of pipe in tunnels where it's accessible, and buried pipe. And so we'd be in a similar situation that we're looking at with Lakeview. So I guess maybe this is a good test case, and then we can move on from there and have a better idea of what we're looking at for these other buildings. But they already have had these same issues. We just haven't had gravel in the lines from a collapsed pipe like we do at Lakeview. That's kind of the difference here. So far, the other 3 buildings, we've been able to replace the pipe for pipe because it's in a tunnel.
Any other questions on this topic? All right, moving on to vehicles. So we have a line item in our budget to replace vehicles as needed or add for new capacity. This year, the board approved the purchase of for $250,000 approximately, 4 SUVs, old people, for our small sports teams and clubs to use to be able to go to the various events. We have a great need at our high schools for this. Not listed here, but elsewhere I've seen about 65% of our student body participates in some sort of extracurricular activity that most often does not occur at the school for their competitions or events. So it requires us to have available transportation to transport these smaller clubs, and that's why we have used that line item to purchase additional vehicles this year. Next on there is the Discovery property purchase. The board approved us to purchase a small parcel behind Discovery Elementary to be used for future expansion. That land will be used as part of a parking solution and a routing of cars on the backside of Discovery Elementary to decrease the traffic out in front of the school. Next one, we have the small capital projects, just small remodels, things that come up. We have a line item to account for that, $250,000. We also have high school athletic equipment replacements. That allows us to replace our large equipment in the high school athletic programs, things like a high jump pit, pole vault equipment, netting for baseball fields, things like that we either be able to replace on a regular basis, or we have a budget for that purpose. Golden Spike payment. So when Golden Spike was built, we financed partial amount of it with some savings in our capital budget, and partial is a loan from Zions Bank is the lender on this one, and so that one has about 7 more years left on that, at about $1.6 million per year, including interest. The interest rate on that loan is 1.75%. Next, we have a lighting upgrade. In 2024, the board approved to upgrade lighting in older buildings and do some weatherization and air sealing to improve the efficiency of our HVAC units. The payment on that loan is about $219,000. Of note on that, that is probably the best investment I've seen lately. It dramatically reduced a lot of our electrical bills in the wintertime. Granted, the last winter was kind of a more mild winter, not like this winter, but it was somewhat mild. We saw some of our utility usage in half by fixing some air sealing areas, upgrading the lighting to more efficient LED lighting in areas. So that's been a worthy upgrade, in my opinion. Building payment, again, we have a loan on the building school. Last payment is this year. After this year, we'll have no more loan payments on that particular project. Lastly is we budgeted $9.2 million for a lease revenue bond. We also raised additional capital outlay taxes to cover that payment. So that's the existence of the $27.3 million capital outlay budget for this year. Do you have any questions on any of these line items, or?
How does our ADs get, do they apply for that?
Yes, they submit a budget to me yearly. One part of our process is that all capital expenditures come through me for final approval. So I see all of them and I make sure that they're in line with the intent of those funds. So at the beginning of the year, the athletic directors will submit a budget. Here's what I plan to spend this on. And they'll spend it all every year because they want to save for larger one-time things. Think of a gym floor replacement or other large expense that we would need to, or a track repair or something like that. So they do put a portion of that away as savings for ongoing expenses later on. Any other questions? We'll go to the next slide. So this is our kind of a projection of where we'll be at the end of the year.
June?
June 30th, yes. So beginning revenue, so beginning balance, we had about $28.2 million in our fund balance to start the year. Our revenue budget from this current year, we have 20.3. Our current revenue collected is 17.5. Of note, we haven't collected all our revenue. Our revenue comes in all from property taxes. Those flow in consistent with the payments from property owners. A large portion, probably about 20% of our property tax revenue comes from personal property taxes. Those are not due until May 1st to the county. So the county will collect them in May and remit the balance to us in June. So there's approximately $3 million that we have not collected yet will be coming in June. So I estimate that the total revenue available is about $45.8 million for this year. We're on the number 2, talked about a year in revenue when we add all these together here. So we have interest earnings on our balances, we have property taxes that come in, we have what we call redemption sales. So when someone is unable to pay their property taxes, whether it's personal property or real property, and the county hasn't collected after a period of years, they'll post what we call a tax sale. We average about $250,000 from tax sales given to us every year. Our county collection rate on property taxes is about 94%. So about 6% of our revenue due to us every year, we're not receiving. So we have to account for that when we budget and set our property tax rates, and that's all done there. So the last one on there, before the little red box there, says transfer from bond fund. So we have a portion of the savings from when we refinanced our bond. 2015, we refinanced the bond from a high single-digit rate, I think around 8%, to a low rate of 2.87%. So we had an interest savings in that year, and so we have some excess funds from prior years that are sitting there and collecting interest. By law, we're allowed to take any excess in that fund to apply it to capital technology purchases. So we talked about how we do technology refreshes every year. We could use those funds, equal those expenses, and transfer it in. So we're averaging between $2.7 and $3 million in there. So we can transfer a portion from the bond fund into the capital fund. And so that depends on where we end up there. I'm estimating around $3 million. So for number two, our year in revenue should be right about $52.8 million. Then we move over to our expenses. So our approved expenditures, and we've added some cost here. The board's approved additional expenditures this year through our board meetings, notably a fuel tank for the South Transportation Center. It's about $500,000. We purchased some SUVs as well. So our planned expenditures for this year so far are about $21.6 million. Then we move down to item number 4, additional budget requests. So we approved the budget request for playgrounds this year to replace worn-out playgrounds that pose safety hazards to students. We also proposed and requested that the air conditioning design and upgrade be put into Bear River Middle School for about $1.5 million. And we also have a pending request possibly for about $1.1 million for portables. So we had all those expenditures. We have additional $3.1 million in expenditures on top of 21.6. So I estimate at the end of this year, on number 4 here, we should have about $28.1 million in our capital reserve budget. That will start for next year's planning purposes. Do you have any questions so far?
I do have a question on that. Is there a recommended amount that we have for like, I don't know, rainy day fund or like to have that capital balance or for interest rate, interest rates, like those kind of things?
Generally, the rating agencies, so I'll answer the last one first. So rating agencies, S&P, Moody's, Fitch, they want to see at least a 5% fund reserve across all funds in your operations. So we've met the minimum there. However, the various different organizations that provide training and continuing education for government finance suggest about 25% of your total expenditures in savings for rainy days or economic disasters. 2008 was a really hard on state budgets and local budgets. A repeat of that would draw down a lot of our funds. So we want to have those things in case of emergencies of that nature. But there's not a specific, you must have this much.
So what would 5 to 25% be like? What's the low and the high of what that is?
So in the capital fund, we spend, last year we spent about $12 million. So 10% would be 1.8, but we're talking about operations overall. We're not talking about capital. We're talking about operation and everything. Our operational budget is about $135 million. So 10% of that would be 13.5, 20% would be 26. So we're getting closer to that 25% number, but we're not quite there yet, of the recommended reserves there. Sure. Any other questions on this slide? All right, next slide.
I know you can read, so I'll quickly go through this. Just wanted to give you a quick summary so we know where we were and so we can talk about where we go. So back in August of 2024, the school board approved a resolution to go for a GEO bond, which was for $220 million for different projects, adding on to the 2 high schools, building 2 middle schools, and turning our intermediate schools into 2 elementary schools, which would have then eliminated Lakeview and North Park. Rebounding, that was that plan. It goes to the vote, the bond is defeated 2-1. Sorry about the comma being missed there in July 9th, but anyway, I think you got me there. Anyway, this school board, during this whole process, what happens if Plan A fails? Well, Plan B was, there's only one other option, and that is to do truth in taxation, so that we can start the projects, but clearly it stops from all at once to now maybe a 30-year plan. So this really was phase 1 of a 3-year or a 3-phase project, which again, we were looking at 2045 before maybe it was all done. August 13th, we have a truth in taxation public hearing and lots of feedback. Again, the board approves the tax increase that generates $11.2 million, $9.2 million for building projects, and $2 million for employee compensation. In December, the board, acting as the municipal building authority, declares its intent to get a loan. That loan happens to be called a lease revenue bond, not a general obligation bond. It was for approximately $140 million. Again, this was for phase 1 of a 3-year phase project.
3-phase.
What am I saying?
3-year.
Oh, 3-year. Don't say 3-year. That would be bad. 1 of a 3-phase project. The community went to work on January 16th. They turned in signed petitions to stop the issuance of the bond, the lease revenue bond that required 20%. They met that, and the county informed us that they had sufficiently obtained and verified that, which means any school project, adding on to the 2 high schools or West Tremont and Elementary, there's no way to go there unless we go to a vote of the community. Again, that kind of leads us to, will you hit the next one? So where are we today? Obviously, the county members have spoken. They got the sufficient amount of signatures. That means that all projects are on hold until November 3rd, if in fact the board decides to move forward and take that before the vote of the people. You could do the whole thing, you could do parts of it, and after stakeholder feedback and find out where is there an appetite for the board to do that. But in terms of getting a loan, this is the way to get the loan, is to have to do a lease revenue bond. So what we want to talk about is what are some options and consideration as we then engage with the community in the coming weeks and months. So just a couple things. When the bond failed in November of 24, there was a feeling of how come you didn't give us some pictures, some design? How come we didn't see what the new middle schools would look like? How come we didn't see what the additions to the high schools look like? We also heard people say, we would like to be part of that process. Don't design everything without us being involved. So we went to work on phase 1 of a 3-phase process to start designing and determining what would it look like for additions to the 2 high schools and the elementary up north in Tremont. We call it number 14. We're going to call it lots of different names because we don't want people to think that's the name we're going to call it. So we'll just call it number 14. What we've incurred right now, and these are somewhat approximate, but the Boxelder High School addition, approximately $2.8 million. Bear River High School addition, approximately $1.5 million. The Bear River High School seminary building demolition. So part of this was we purchased the current seminary building at Bear River High with the idea that the safety of the campus, we would go north. Anyway, we'll have to demolish that. Yes. Oh yeah, sorry. The church was going to rebuild their seminary building somewhere, either on spot. So we did a trade of land. They were excited to be able to get their new building started, and it actually works long-term if we ever add on to Bear River High long-term to do that. So thank you for that, Tiffany. Anyway, West Tremont, oh, Karen.
So in that, are they going to be building over the summer, are they using the old building for next year? What is their?
Well, go ahead.
Currently, they're working with the city on a site mapping plan. Once they have that, they'll have architectural renderings and start on that. I assume that they'll probably will start on that sometime this summer and probably be done with it sometime the fall spring, depending on how fast the construction goes. But currently, they haven't started on, they have a ton of construction, they're working through the legal process with the city.
So they'll be using the building for 1 year?
Yeah.
We have, they have an option to that. We need to, because it'll be the own asset, they'll need to lease it back from us at market rates.
Did you want to say something? So anyway, we also have obviously started a design process with West Tremont Elementary. Again, we're estimating around $600,000 of design costs that we've already done. So
Upgrades for the code.
correct. We had a plan. It needed to be upgraded, and so that was kind of where we are with it. You want to speak to that? How do you go at all? Yeah, because you are. That is your.
Where'd the second lapel go?
So, the code cycle is every 3 years. When you guys originally brought out the number 14, it was in 2017. So we've actually had 2 code upgrades from them, and the structural code has changed significantly. The electrical code has changed significantly, and the energy code has changed significantly. And so most of the redesign is upgrading all of those different portions of the building so that you can build it up to code now, the current code.
Okay, thank you. We obviously have explored the idea of using capital reserve to add on to Discovery, which would help alleviate rebounding and help alleviate Lakeview's struggles as well. So all of these have been part of discussion over the last, several months. And again, now that the lease revenue bond is on hold, we still have $5 million out there. Now, Discovery is not part of the lease revenue bond, so that's different. But the other aspects of Butler High, Bear River High, Seminary, West Tremont, that's around $5 million if we stop right now. And according to the lease revenue bond and the signatures that were gathered, we're on hold, but we still have bills to pay. If we were to complete the designs for West Tremont and Bear River High and Butler High and just complete it so we had it and it's ours, and assuming we did it within 3 years, so there was no structural updates, and somehow that was something that came back as a school district, we need another $3 million to do that. So those are some things as we consider that we do have some incurred costs right now because of the planning we were moving forward that are now on hold. Is there any questions about that? Okay. Is this me? All right. So one of the questions that came from the school board was, what if we just pay off the bond, the GEO bond from '09 that's going to be done in 2030? As Neil has talked about, we owe approximately $11 million. We pay $3.3 million for the next couple of years, and in 2030 we pay at 1.6. Right now, that's costing an average home owner in our community around $105 per year. obviously, in order to pay that off, we would have to use capital reserve if we wanted to pay it off. Some things that are interesting. Interest rate now on that loan is 2.87. Interest collected on reserves is 4%. So we're getting more money on the money that we have to hold than we are paying. And you can see there on ... in the middle of the page, the total interest to be collected on reserves is 2.3, but if we have to pay our interest, it's 1.5. So you're going to see that it's
Actually, Keith, right in there. The net interest is the difference between interest collected and interest rate on the bond.
Oh, thank you. Correct. So anyway, it would hurt our capital reserve, which says if you took 13 million out of this 28 or 29 that's been talked about, you're already down to 15. Obviously, Discovery's off the table, and any building of a West Tremont school through this capital is off the table. So paying it off, although it would lower people's taxes by 105, it really depletes our capital reserve and the flexibility to do what we're going to have to make some decisions on moving forward. So, do you want to do this one? Awesome.
Okay, so there's kind of been this suggestion to consider just building West Tremont and the elementary school 14 out there. Our preliminary projections from the architect and our CMGC is $38 million. If we were to pay that right now from capital reserves, that would put us at a negative $9 million in our capital fund, which obviously we can't do that. We have to have a safe rainy day fund available. So the second option that we have available to us is to take it out to the lease revenue bond to be voted on November 3rd, with or without other projects combined. So that proposal and then the amount to be determined with the stakeholder input based on whether or not other projects need to be put on with that, or it's the only project.
Or we just hold and generate money.
Which is, yeah.
Yes, Corey. I feel like I had my head around as far as going to bid when the right time is and how that affects
how that affects. So we hold and put it obviously on the ballot in November. Then we're say by some crazy idea that it passes, where does that put us like on when you do go to bid, and considering that we had all the design was done. If we follow through and get the design done so it's ready to go, where does that put us starting school in that building?
So I'm understanding that you're asking
Sorry.
if the design's 100% complete, ready to go to bid,
Yeah.
and we wait for this bond, or for the election, for the vote, and the vote passes for the West Tremont Elementary School, then when could we actually get a track hoe on site and start digging? And then when would it be open for students to come in? Is that correct? And that includes the right bid window. I'm gonna let Wayne or Shane tackle this one because they have so much experience in this. I would say that your typical optimal bid window would be December to January, but they can speak more to that and time frame of how long to build this building.
So what we found over the years, and most school districts have found over the years, the optimal bid window is actually January and February to get your most competitive bids. As you guys know, with December, everybody goes on vacation for the holidays. So we usually see it January, February, sometimes into early March, but what that does is that allows the contractors to break ground in March, April so for what you're talking about, that would be March and April of 27, and that school could be opened August of 28. So for an elementary school, you typically see right around 14 months for construction.
Thank you.
Keith and I are going to cover this one together. So there's also been kind of this suggestion, like, to consider roll back truth in taxation. So the first thing to recognize and understand is that employee salaries will be impacted. We would either have to decrease salaries or freeze salaries and benefits based on whatever the WPU comes out in the current legislative session. With consideration of that, we just wanted to show some of the slides on this. Keith can talk to them if you want. So if you look at the northern and central, oh, sorry, I thought you were talking to me.
So the Utah
School
School
Board
Board
Association.
Association, USBE, they actually send this, they collect it throughout the state. And so these are starting salaries for a teacher with 31 districts reporting. And so you can see that we're ranked 31st.
Sorry, 26, just to clarify.
Oh,
the first
sorry,
five,
sorry.
yes,
The
so
first,
26 out of 26.
Out of 26. So anyway, you can see how different people start their salaries. So, you know, when we went to truth and taxation and added 2% employee compensation, that did help us move up, but to the same spot. So we did improve, which is great, but if you take truth and taxation back, at least that portion, that is gonna have to lower, and or this next year's COLA, that could maybe be 4%, might be 2%, or 3% could be 1%, or you get my idea. So anyway, so if you pull that back, it does affect us. Heidi Jo and I just came from a job fair. And I'm looking around all these people. And you know, we're trying to get the very best teachers. And they're not dummies. They're looking and going, so you're saying Logan, kind of go,
sorry,
you're
go
doing
back.
overall benefits.
I was going to show benefits.
Anyway,
Let's do this.
so just for example, cash is 60,000, we're 58. It's only $2,500, but it's $2,500. Logan is also in the area, and when you start, you know, looking at them, they're up at 66, and so someone can go to work for Logan for 8,000 more than coming over to Box Elder. So anyway, different individuals are motivated by different things. We have a lot to offer in our school district. It might not be first year starting salary. It is interesting of note that when it comes to our overall, will you just show me the 30-year?
Yeah.
Let's go to that.
They're over here. Give me a
Yeah,
second.
sorry.
This out, I was planning on benefits next.
Now, I will say that our salary, probably 8, maybe 9 years ago, some adjustments were made where we went from a 10-column salary schedule to a 5-column salary schedule. And we actually, near the end of a career, we're a little more competitive.
We're right there, kind of average. We're 13 out of 14.
We're kind of in the middle of the road at the end of a career that we have. So that's good, but you've got to get to the 30-year mark by being one of the lowers until you make up. So anyway,
That's 30 years in our district.
30 years in our district, or 30 years combined in education where we brought people from other districts and they're not being paid.
And that's with the master's, right?
And that's with a master's degree. Yeah.
Okay, so benefits, I'll go back there and you can talk about that for a minute.
Benefits, obviously, you look at your health and dental, and things are not the same when I first started in 1993. Things are a little bit different, and anyway, so you can see all the various levels here. Unfortunately, we are near the bottom in terms of all the school districts. When you add up all the benefits, costs, etc., we're at number 2. So, or we're at the second to the last. So anyway, that's are all considerations. So one of the things we try to do is be as competitive as we can, and that truth and taxation allowed us to be better. But it's not like we're rolling in the dough, and we still need. That's something we have to continue to work on.
The truth in taxation, where we are collecting you know, the 11 million.
11.2 million.
2 goes to salary, but the other amount, is there?
That's all in capital.
Capital, we can't just, let's just move it on over and make that one.
Yeah. You want to add something to that?
Yeah, so all of our salaries and benefits are paid with what we call general funds, Fund 10 or maintenance operations. So that, as I talked about in the opening part, those come from federal dollars, state MSP and Remnant School Program dollars, or local property tax dollars in our board, basic, or voted levies. The capital levy, which was, we had the largest raise this year, past year, is only for building of schools and other capital expenditures, cannot be used for salaries. So there's a restriction on how we use that. We cannot use those funds for anything else but building and purchasing long-lived assets. The above the line, below the line, that goes back to how our state funds are allocated. So with basically some of our unrestricted dollars are above the line. Our restricted dollars, think like dual immersion, teacher supply money, adult education, CTE, those are more restricted in nature, and we can't be used for general purposes. The largest percentage of our salaries come from the general education program. And so when we are looking at raising taxes, or raising salaries, we can't look at all funds available. We have to look only at our funds that are unrestricted in nature.
So kind of the second part of that would just be then all new construction would be on hold, and the additions, remodels, and AC projects that are currently planned for will be delayed. As well as, do you want to talk about the secured vestibules?
Yeah, one of the things that the plan would have done would have secured the vestibules at Box Elder Middle School, Box Elder High, and Bearville High. I still think that's a high need. I was just talking to Mr. B, the principal at Box Elder Middle School this afternoon, and he says, today I had a parent walk in and said, do you know that I've just been in the building? In other words, you can walk into Box Elder Middle School and go right, which is north, and you can go wherever you want to go. You can go left and not go in the office and go as far south as you want to go. Or you can go left and right and circle to the west. So we have an issue at Box Elder Middle School securing the vestibule. I do think that's an issue that needs to be addressed regardless of where all this stuff goes. Whether it's a remodel project, whether it's a new building project, Box Elder Middle School does need to have a secure vestibule. Box Elder High and Bearville High, largest campuses in the district, certainly, there's lots of doors and kids go out, lots of doors, but at least if you could lock them and then maybe invest in having an opportunity where when the bell rings, the doors become unlocked, and then when the bell rings again, they lock up, so that we can at least secure at least the main entrances. You can just walk into all three of those schools. Now, Bearville Middle is secured. It's got a small little entrance, but at least you can't get into that building, and I think that's a positive. Many of our elementaries are there, but not all of them. Are they all there?
Not Century.
Not Century.
Discovery we're working on.
Discovery's close.
They're buzz in, but they're not secured right to the office.
Anyway, so we think that if you roll back truth in taxation, and obviously all new stuff is off the table. We just don't have enough in capital reserve. So we're just going to have to hold and hold. If we give the money back, then we really are, the only way long-term to ever address this would have to be a general obligation bond or a lease revenue bond that the public and community members could support, for security updates, et cetera, So all of those things I think are on the table that we'll have to look at.
But if we go back to, if we do take it to the voters, will it be a no dollar increase to anybody because we're already bringing that in? Right?
Yeah.
We're going to do these projects, it's not going to cost you any more.
Yeah, so adding, building West Tremont Elementary and adding on to the 2 high schools, if those were the 3 projects that we wanted to continue, we're not going to go ask for more money because the truth in taxation has already allowed that $9.2 million that Neil talked about to pay for the bond, the lease revenue bond for the next 20 plus years waiting.
So Keith, basically it's like you're building a home and you have to get a loan for the home, correct? And so we're just asking to get this loan so that we can do these projects, but we aren't raising any taxes, they've already been raised.
They've been raised, that's correct.
We're not asking to raise taxes, we're just asking to get this loan so that we can do these projects.
Correct. And obviously the community at this point doesn't either, well, they don't want the taxes raised, but they have been raised, or they don't like the projects that are being solicited. And so that's where I think public input again. I don't know which public deserves the most voice. I don't know if it's the loudest voice. You know, we're gonna have to get a mix of lots of people and decide what are we willing to support, what are our next steps. Obviously just holding and saving money and trying to look at whatever that next step is, but you need 38 million to build West Tremont.
So how long would that take to hold?
Well, if we have 9.2 million and we say that all that 9.2 million is gonna go to West Tremont, and it's at 38 million now, and Wayne and Shane, I believe, lately the report is that every year inflation's about 7%. So the 38 million, obviously I'm not a real great math teacher, but 38 by 9 is 4+ years, plus a 7% increase is 28% over that, which means a third of that 39, and now we're, anyway, what I'm saying is probably 6 or 7 years just to get West Tremont built if we're gonna just save. And we still have not addressed AC. We don't know if Bear River Middle, Bear River Middle, Box Elder Middle School, North Park and Lakeview's infrastructure is gonna hold. Sounds like we got a plan for Lakeview, but that's all sort of a thing we gotta consider. So we can hold, and we can just keep adding portables, and we can wait and wait and wait until the appetite of our community is, okay, here's a plan we've come together with, we like it, and we'll go out and instead of maybe fighting against the district, we're all on the same page fighting together to say, this is what's good for our students.
So if we go back to when we had the Y2K analytics survey, and we paid them, I think, 40,000 plus to do that for us. If I remember right, they said that what we would need to do in order to get these projects is to get the taxpayers' trust up. That was the underlying thing, that they told us we probably would have passed the bond, and they said the reason is the taxpayer trust. And I think that from what we've seen in the bond not passing at a greater level than Y2K analytic even thought.
Yeah.
And with the petition, that we're right there, that we need to do what it takes to get the taxpayer trust in order to move forward any big projects. I think we could probably do something with the West Tremont Elementary with some creative financing. But I think the question is, what do we need to do to get the taxpayer trust back?
Agreed.
And when we were talking with Senator Sandel and Representative Peterson, they suggested that the biggest way we could do that is maybe roll back that hidden taxation, at least if we kept the salary part, roll back the rest and say, okay, we've heard you, we're sorry that we did it in a way you didn't like, but let's work together and work to build that trust.
That only came from Sandel, though, that wasn't Peterson's. He was in the room, he didn't say that.
I'm pretty sure Peterson agreed 100%.
He didn't say that. I was in that room too. He said something else, but he didn't say that, and I agree with Stephanie 100%.
I guess you guys can agree, but I talked to Peterson.
What's this creative financing that you're talking about?
Well, all of the upper ed, higher ed had to cut their their budgets by 5%, right? All of the schools in Utah, that was a legislative mandate. And when they did that, they're like, how are we gonna do that? But they worked together with their boards and their trustees, and all of them were able to do that through whatever creative financing they came together at. I'm just saying,
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I was just curious. What are you, so you're suggesting we make cuts otherwise, like from our budget now to build a building?
however we can people's trust, however that works out, and get them to help us pass it on. So, I mean,
I think that maybe leads into the next portion of just kind of saying like where we're at with the elementary buildings and what, maybe that's helpful too right now. It's just like what's another suggestion to consider is like, let's just add portables where they're needed for now and look at that. And thank you so much for those that have contributed to the conversation about what that costs and what the considerations are. I just wanted to kind of go through what elementary would be. I'm going to start on the south end. On the south end, things are looking a little bit better as far as overcrowding. We've had a couple of bubbles of kids that have moved through the 5th grades that are now reaching the intermediate schools that has taken a little bit of the pressure off of our south end schools. Both Century and Discovery are just kind of holding where they're at. Golden Spike, as you know, it's pretty new and it needs the classroom. They are going to have to move their speech and OT out into hallways under the stairs, somewhere that's not private and confidential, which is not a viable option for them because they're adding an additional classroom next year. That is also with their SEL prep being a push-in prep. So when we talk about push-in preps, that means that classroom is social emotional learning. It's like character ed, like how do we, yep, it's one of their behavior, or one of their 5 preps. So teachers get a 30-minute prep every day of the week essentially, and that prep gets pushed into the classroom so the teachers then have to teach in a classroom with their students. They're prepping in the classroom while the students are being taught by a paraprofessional, and the students are still there, the teacher is still there, so they don't really get that prep uninterrupted, because typically what happens is the students and the para who are teaching kind of expect that the teacher's going to step in, intervene on behaviors. There's more interruptions there, so that's not ideal. Lakeview has requested 1 portable this year. They have said if that's really not feasible, we can continue to squeeze in and make things work. However, a consideration is that we've had to add 2 ELL teachers this year that are sharing a small instructional space moving in the next year. A special education teacher has been added. Typically that special education teacher would be running groups in a typical sized classroom. In their building, their special ed teacher was already in a smaller classroom, a room that's not really suitable to be having resource in. We added an additional SPED resource teacher that's in a smaller office space, so that individual is also not in a classroom. Right now they've got STEM in a portable, keyboarding in a portable, music's on the stage. The stage is not ADA accessible, but it is working. They are making it happen. One of the things that they feel like would be helpful to their school is to just, the portables there is an alley there where kids come off the playground and run to highs, so coming up with a solution to be able to fence that so that students aren't hiding behind the portables would be beneficial.
Can we even add a portable? Will the fire marshal allow us to do that?
We have to present a plan to them for them to give approval or deny it. So, yes, you're right, it may not be an option. Fortunately, they were able to make some itinerant spaces there this last year that are really working very well for the counselors and the behavior specialists. And anyway, that's where SPED's at right now, but they really do need a bigger space to be able to meet the needs of all the students and remain confidential. 3 Mile Creek is the ideal building right now in elementary in our district. They have a space for art, music, computer lab, and their character ed prep, and they are able to have 2 intervention rooms, their coach and the para room. So they're really comfortable in their space. They really have a couple of extra classrooms. At Willard, technically, they would need a portable to support the SEL push-in prep that's happening, but they're not requesting it. So again, both Golden Spike and Willard would technically need one. Lakeview has requested it, but yeah, pending the ability to actually do that. We're hoping to and have agreed to.
Can I just say on the previous slide, I just happened to look at the newspaper today, and in Cary, the discussion in the newspaper was that they have currently 1,800 rooftops. That was the term they used in the newspaper. And I don't recall exactly, but they expect right now with some subdivisions to add another 400 rooftops in the next, I believe, 3 to 5 years. I think that's what I remember reading. Don't quote me on that exactly. And so when you talk about 3 Mile Creek has room right now, Perry is seeing some of this. And I drive I believe it's regularly I live in Perry. A lot of times if I have to go to Walmart, I'll go on 12th West, and they have I don't know how big that is, but it's a big subdivision out there right now going on. So that's just one of those things that, do we wait till we're here and then 3 Mile Creek's full and then try to figure it out then, or we take some, forward thinking and try to do that?
Yeah, I should mention before we move on to the next slide that Century has currently 1 portable, Discovery currently has 2 portables. In Lakeview, we are at 8 portables. So just kind of before we move on, so we're aware of how many are at each of those schools, because that does tie back into that infrastructure, the restrooms, all of those types of complications. So if we added portables on the north end to kind of make things a little bit more stable. Sorry, I need to pull up my picture here so I got them correct. Fielding, we added 1 portable this year. They would like 2 more. Garland doesn't have any, but they need 2. And McKinley has 7 and North Park has 9, so I'll get into kind of what they would need in order to really stabilize that. Like I said, at Fielding, we added 1 portable. Next year, they're adding a 2nd, 3rd grade split. Their 5th grade classrooms have gotten up to 31, 32, 33 students the last couple of years trying to make it work. Next year, it's not feasible for them to do that. They would be at 36, I think, in their 5th grade classrooms, what's projected. So they would like to add a 2nd, 3rd grade split, and we're adding a 5th grade out there. So that's 2 additional classrooms, which would be 2 portables. We do kind of have to have the 3rd and 5th grade overflow onto the stage and into the conference rooms for their intervention groups, which means that conference room cannot be used for IEPs, small group RTI, things like that on the days that that's happening in there. Garland would like to add 2 portables. They have, their STEM is actually happening out in the middle of the Kiva, so they've tried to barricade off where the interventions are supposed to happen. The principal there, the community council, they are really positive and trying so hard to make things work. They've been accepting of, bringing in special education programs that have had to be moved out of North Park in order to make room at North Park for the growing population there. So they're really at a point where that's not as feasible as it has been in the past. So the STEM is out in the Kiva, it needs to be in the classroom. Their character ed is pushed in, and they only have 1 intervention room kind of set aside to make that happen. And art and music has kind of been being pushed into the classroom, or in their own classroom, sorry, they're in a separate classroom. So they need 2 portables. McKinley, they're losing quite a few students from kindergarten. About 12 to 15 is what the principal projected, going to the DLI programs at North Park and Garland, which causes the increase in those buildings and a little bit more need there. Right now, of their portables, they have 6 that are all just gen ed classrooms, regular classrooms. One of those is being used for music. They have 2 push-in preps, so character ed and then computer labs are pushed in. Technically, they should have 2 portables there. They don't know where to put them. They don't know how to help that grow, so they're holding. North Park has requested another portable for next year. They do have 9 portables. They're all classrooms, but currently they have computers as a push-in prep, music's on the stage. Corey'd have to remind me if that's ADA accessible or not. And they will need to do their character ed as push-in next year. They only have 1 intervention room. The rest of what they're doing for reading groups happens out in the hallway or in the quads, which is not confidential, and there's some concerns there. So when you add up the number of portables that we have on the north end currently with what they're looking for, just quick, 9, 10, 11, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 total portables on the north end.
Can I ask a question, Heidi Jo? Do you have a feel for what it would look like if we put a Tree Mountain West school on a ballot and we're looking at 2028 for, before that can be usable. How are these schools feeling, or have they even considered, can this hold off? I hate to spend $1 million, whatever, how many dollars on portables if we would be able to move them into a classroom, like into a new school, and get rid of the portables. I don't want to. So what does that look like for them to hold for 2 years later?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because if there was a plan to move forward with construction, the portables, I think that it's probable that they could hold. It would still squish them and squeeze them and make things really uncomfortable for teachers. For example, again, what we've talked about is they'll just push into the prep in the classroom. So, for example, at building, they already have some push-ins that they're not able to do preps in a separate classroom. But if they had to make it happen with what they have currently, they just push all preps into the classroom, which would free up a couple of classroom spaces. The second, third grade split, and the fifth grade, they'd be able to make that work by making sure that all preps are pushed into the classroom. So art would then push in CS, computer science, STEM, and music. The same thing at Garland. If it's uncomfortable, it's not ideal to be teaching the STEM teacher that's trying to teach coding and things like that out in the open with some curtains around her. That's not ideal long term. But everybody's willing to pull together and make it happen, so you could do that. This is just things that we keep hearing from the association about how we're not meeting their needs or their negotiated agreements to provide them with this space that they can conducively prep in. So yes, options are available, but there's a short-term solution. It tends to be more difficult to get people to buy into that type of plan when there's not an end in sight.
Can I ask you a question? When you talk about putting this out for bond, the West Tree Mountain.
Where you're from this right there, that's the main.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So when we talk about going to bond for that, is that money in addition to what the district is already collecting? So
No, that's a lease revenue bond. This is a loan to use the funding we've earned through truth and taxation to pay for.
but we're not.
It's not additional money.
We're just talking, when we're talking a bond, we're talking at least revenue bond, putting that on the November.
Absolutely.
So I'm just,
You're clarifying.
I'm just clarifying, because we've been saying bond, and I'm like, are we talking
Lease revenue.
we're talking about lease revenue bond in November.
I guess technically they're saying that if we drop our tax rate, then we would go for the GO bond.
I mean,
That would be an option.
If you were to drop the tax rate, there would not be enough money to do anything. There would not be an add-on, there would not be a West Tremont 14. There would not.
If we did drop it and not do the lease revenue and just go for a GO bond,
Once trust has been established.
yeah, I mean, that would be
That's
another.
2 months.
I'm just trying
Drop
to-
the tax rate until August. It goes into effect in November, which is the same time that it would be on the ballot, the general obligation would be on the ballot, is that right?
You would go
Actually,
for a
so
deal bond
to
too.
drop the tax rate doesn't require a hearing, we could do it at our June budget meeting. However, that tax rate is effective for, as of July 1. The property taxes aren't due until November, so that's why we see the money in November, but it's effective back to the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July 1. If you were to do drop the rate and go for a GO bond, general obligation bond, we probably won't receive funding for that bond until May or June.
After this.
Well, no, May or June after the election passes, so.
Right, so you would, if we kept the lease revenue bond, we would have the money ready to go for bid in January, February.
If
we
it
drop
passes.
if it passes. If we drop the rate, then we have to wait an extra to get it past the best opportunity to go out for bid.
So the bidding and the financing are separate. We can manage the process separately, and speaking to when we receive the funding for that operation model tax.
I mean, it would not be ideal to, if we wanted to be able to go out for bid as soon as possible, to stick with the lease revenue bond, keep our tax rate where it is, so that we would get the best position in January to go out to get the bid.
Correct. It's not ideal. Generally, there's a 6 to 12 month gap between a bond passing and construction starting.
For a general obligation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That was, any other questions on that? That seems like, is there any clarification needed? Any
I just wanted to
additional
clarify
questions?
the two different kinds of bonds that we're talking about.
Correct. So the lease revenue bond is, right now, if we want to do any portion of that, whether that's West Tremont only, whether that's it has to go to vote to the people. A concern, or at least a consideration, is if the board decided to go West Tremont only on the lease revenue bond, you will have people voting in Willard, Perry, Manaway, Brigham City for a lease revenue bond that will affect West Tremont, Garland, and McKinley. Whether or not that would pass would be a question of, our data to say, would there be enough support on the south end for something that's only for the north end? You could throw Discovery in there, perhaps with an addition, and that affects some of the south, but not all of the south. So those will be considerations as we visit with our stakeholders. All right, so school board members, obviously, other considerations, things that you would like to discuss, options, etc., ideas in terms of how we move forward to, as Karen calls it, regain trust in the community. Who are those?
That was Y2K analytics.
Well, my point is we all agree that, we know with the signatures that that's the case. So the question is, it's 20% of the voters. Do you want parents? Do you want just community members as a whole? Do you want, there's a lot of people of who do you want part of that voice? We'll have to certainly discuss that at some point. These are the things that at some point the board will have to consider long-term, and the community will have to look at this on long-term. Now, if I'm going to a private school, an online somewhere else, I might not be interested in any of this. We do live in a city, a community where we do have public education. It's funded by public education, but not everybody does that. So again, you'll have to look at the betterment of the whole. So I just want to remind us of some projects at some level, at some point, sometime in the next, I don't know when, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. North Park Elementary, replacing the entire school. Lakeview Elementary, replacing the entire school. Century Elementary, portions of their school was built in '65, but they've had multiple additions. But some of their building is still 1965. Bearver Middle School, the entire school. Box Elder Middle School, they have a new gym. When I say new, it's 14 years old, 2012. The auditorium was built in the 80s, so not 60s. But basically, as you go south of the main office, that's all 1965. So, you get rid of some. Box Elder High's gym, auditorium, and CTE buildings, those are all original 1960. And I can't remember, Clay and Dave, I can't remember about the auditorium at Bearver High. Is it original to the original, or was it added on? 70-something, okay. Anyway, I couldn't remember, I was just thinking the portions, but the gym is the original, CTE buildings, north end classrooms. So all those things at some point will have to be considered. Obviously, our plan was to get rid of some of that Box Elder High, Bearver High, and no, it wasn't dealing with Bearver Middle, Box Elder Middle, and North Park and Lakeview. So I think that's where we're all on the, what are we gonna do? What's our next steps? So that's all we really had. We know that some conversation is gonna have to have, because at the end of the day, if we keep our truth in taxation amount, that 9.2 million, we can do certain projects, but building a brand new school, and our least expensive one would be West Tremont, or replace Lakeview, or replace North Park. That's gonna be 38 million today, and if longer we wait, that'll be 40, 45. If you're gonna look at a middle school change, now we're looking at 55 to 60, depending on how much of that building is, and which end of the district. Obviously, population at Box Elder Middle School is, closer to 1,100. Population at Box Elder Bearfoot Middle School, is around 840. So you have to have a few more classrooms, etc., on the south end. Anyway, all those things are discussions that need to be part of this, and at the end of the day, we don't have enough money to do it all. So now we got to look at, okay, what resonates with our community that meets everybody's, I guess, personal opinion, and that is going to be hard to get 20,000 people to agree on the same thing, but there does need to be some outreach and decide where we go. And I think that's where we're at today. So are there any other ideas or considerations that we have not talked about today that maybe you would like to talk about today? Either we might answer it, might be able to answer it, or we could go find out more information.
Alright, so I did some math, and I'm gonna have Neil correct it because he's way better at it. So if we were to cut 5% out of our $135 million budget, that's $6.7 million. But that only can come out of the general fund, correct? And that is salaries.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, so if we're looking at operational cuts, that's the general fund, it's not that's not in the capital fund. Our supply, for reference, a 5% cut to our general fund budget is about $6.7 to $7 million. That is half of our supply budget. So supply is anything that's under the $2,500 cost threshold. So computers are supplies, our desks, our chairs, our paper, the stuff that when you purchase food for school lunch, all those things are considered a supply. We expect half a supply budget to meet that target. We can't operate classrooms on that kind of cuts. 90%, about $90 million of $135 million of our operational budget goes directly to salaries and benefits. The rest is to operations, think of utilities, so gas, electric, water, sewer. Those are a big, a nice chunk of that. Then we have to buy school buses. We have to maintain those school buses. We have to maintain our own vehicle fleet for our district employees who use vehicles. We have a lot of fixed costs that aren't really able to be reduced to be able to significantly reduce our actual budget. School districts really operate on a pretty lean budget when it comes to operation. There's not a lot of extra things that we do that aren't educational necessary.
So if you say again how much 25% is?
About $7 million. Yeah, our budget fluctuates between 135 and 140. Actual expenditures depending on the year and what expenses we have. So it goes up and down.
So,
Thank you.
in my mind, we're bringing in 9.2 million that we could be saving if we choose that option. And reducing the budget to find ways to save, while we could still look at some areas, that does not balance out. That puts us further behind. And through a lot of the posts and the promotion of the petition, it was stated that they wanted us to save the money, they wanted to stop the lease revenue bond, and so they didn't have to pay interest, and they wanted us to just save the 9.2 million in taxes. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways. You've asked to save the money, and then other people are saying, remove the taxes, we can't do both. And I don't feel like we should keep just pushing projects off forever. So we have to make a choice of doing something, whether that's going to the ballot or saving up until we have enough money.
I have one question, because I don't know
Sorry, Barbara.
a lot those on separate lines, or is it one lump?
You can only ask for it one time. Like, if we're gonna go on for a lease, can we put on 3 different options? Or is it just, this is the option?
On the ballot.
Yeah, sorry, on the ballot, not, I mean, I'm assuming we could do that ahead of time in focus groups or surveys or something. But on the ballot, is that an option?
Are you suggesting each project be a separate item to vote on the ballot, or 3 different plans?
Yes to all of that.
So when we place a bond on the ballot, we're one entity seeking one bond loan amount. We put a correct description in what we will use those bond proceeds for. But we don't have the ability to put 3 different bond options on, let's say A, B, C, and D to vote on those. It's one yes or no vote. Do you want to support this amount in the projects that go with that amount? Or no, I don't want to support that amount in these projects. But they're together, it's a mutually exclusive option.
We would have to do that work before, so that we knew that we had the support of our community to say, this is the one we're gonna put on.
Superintendent, did you have something?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I wanted you to be able to finish up, but this meeting was to inform us all of different options that we have moving forward. And then I'd like us to have a little bit of time to kind of mull it over before we start making decisions and moving forward what that looks like. So what I would like us to do from here now is take some time, think about it, pencil it out, whatever. And then also I want you to really think about what it looks like going forward with our communities, right? With the people in our communities and how to go about doing that in the best way possible. My first thought is our community councils, just because they are in place and they're already dedicated to their schools and have already dedicated time. That's just an idea, but that gives you maybe something to be thinking about, like how this can move forward. I guess from here though, I don't know, I mean, I would love to be able to speak with each of you individually and then come back to, or would you like to schedule another work session in about a week for that purpose, or superintendent, what do you think moving forward?
What I was gonna talk about, and I would request Neil's opinion on this, because he's been more closely attached with our bond attorney and whatnot, is just timelines that when we need to absolute dates of when we need to do things. In order to get something on the ballot, we have to vote on it. The board has to vote on it in the August election. Okay. Also, we have a preliminary budget the board looks at and votes on in June's board meeting. Then we settle on the final budget in the August board meeting. So both of those are factors with this. Is that correct, Neil?
The August meeting.
That's
The August meeting is only necessary if we decide to pursue truth in taxation.
very good.
Otherwise, your budget you establish in June is your final budget.
Thank you. And so those are factors that we have to take into consideration as we look at timelines. Now, the problem is no matter what we do right now, the work that our CMGCs have done, our architects and our construction companies have done, then that's going to be a little bit off because of inflation, because everything's going to be put back a year, and it's, are we going to be able to do 2 remodels? If in fact we put it on the ballot, would we have enough money? If in fact it is a 7% increase, if it's, we are pretty close, cutting pretty close, if it's a 3% increase on that 140 million. Am I making sense there? And so I'm not sure if we need to come back here in a week. I'm just saying, I don't know. But I'm telling you, these are the timelines that we've got to follow that are absolutes or musts. And I guess June would be the most important, and August, if in fact you want to build lease revenue law.
So what are your thoughts, board members, as far as coming back? Thank you for that timeline.
I feel like I want as much time to discuss this so I don't feel rushed when we're making a decision. I feel like we should go right now, and I would meet every day just to have a good plan that we're all on the same page, we're not confused, and we have something that we know we're doing. So I'm all for more meetings. And then the other thing is we did ask about renovations to be that presented today. Are we having time for that? I just don't know if we're ending this or if I was just wait. I don't know.
What did you want to know about renovation?
Well, us 4, 5, I can count. We went to the old Garland School and did the walkthrough, and we asked them to come and talk to us about what is possible and what is.
Like, let's just give you guys a chance to talk about that tour or what you learned from it. Thank you.
Stephanie, I'll give you this.
Talking.
Thank you.
So if extensive renovations of our older buildings is something that the school board wants to explore, I would recommend that as a board, you allocate some funds that we can then hire structural engineers and electrical engineers and mechanical engineers to evaluate these buildings so that we have a really good idea of what the options are and what those costs could be. EWA does have some preliminary options that they could do leading into this, but that would be my thought before we just say, oh, that building was renovated and it looks really nice, let's go for that. I think we need to do some groundwork before that happens. I'll let Wayne talk about some preliminary things that they can do as a construction company, maybe before we bring in that group of engineers.
So, as part of our current contract is a small project CM with the district, we could come in and a lot of the reason you're talking about replacing buildings is because of unreinforced masonry. You have several buildings that have sections, if not the entire building, on the state registry. One of the things that was shown to us in the old Garland Elementary is that some of the walls, they went and did some basically exploratory search, and they found some rebar, so they had reinforcement in some of the walls, and that's how they got that to pass for a commercial, well, it's a school in the sense of it's a private school. There are certain things the state requires of public education that is not required of private education in the buildings, so it's a little more stringent for you guys. We do have access to a radar machine that we could go into some of these old buildings and give you a preliminary feel for what the walls are that are on these state registered unreinforced masonry buildings. That to me would be a starting point. Once we find that out, that's when you would bring in the engineers to do a more detailed study, because we're by no means an expert on it. We just have the means to see if, okay, there's rebar in that wall. There's not rebar in that wall. If there's no rebar in the wall, then it's not attainable for you. It's a waste of money. It's good money after bad, as the saying goes. It's more expensive than just doing it. And so that's what we could bring in the interim, and then you can decide if you want to hire these engineers to do more in-depth study. Doesn't mean that the outcomes may be any better, but when state educators do remodels, we are held to a higher standard. We have different inspectors. It's not community inspectors. We have to follow special inspection procedures. There's just a lot more that we have to follow as contractors building schools for the state with public money. So I'm not sure, I can't tell you with any clarity if your buildings are going to be worth remodeling. We can, like I say, do that study on the walls and then turn it over to engineers to give us some detailed perspective on that, but we are willing to do that.
So something I found can you hear me? Okay. Something that I found really interesting on this walkthrough was that they were saying that what year was this building made or built? 19.
It was in the 60s.
In the 60s. So what I found out was that maybe there are rebar in it, but because it was built before that was coded as not necessary, required, then that they deemed all buildings before that time as unreinforced. That is why we always assumed it was unreinforced. Can I say that accurately?
Correct. Building inspections were non-existent in the cities in the 60s. They come later on, late 70s to mid 70s. So the state has kind of said none of those buildings were inspected, so we can't guarantee that what's on the drawings was done. That's part of why they're on that registry.
So that's why it might be advantageous for us to have them take their x-ray, that's not what you called it, but something to look at the walls to see if there is this rebar. Because if it is, then at least it's kind of reinforced. It might not be up to code what it is now as reinforced masonry, but it might be a little bit better, right? Can I say that?
Correct. And the other thing that you're up against is, as part of the code, when you reach a certain threshold of the building, you have to bring it to current standards. So,
What about remodel percentage?
yes, correct.
20% is that what he says?
It varies depending on what it is. So structural, if you affect so much on structural, it can be 20%. Masonry, if you affect so much, maybe it's 30%. There's different numbers in there. There's some of them as low as 10%. And on top of that, you're going to probably do asbestos abatement, lead paint abatement in these old buildings because it's in all of them.
So I found that so fascinating because, you know, when you say, let's just do a remodel, like it just sounds like, okay, let's cut some windows open and we're all happy. I don't know. Whatever it is, but it isn't just that simple because if you affect so much of the masonry, then you have to bring the whole building up to code, which then adds a whole nother dollar amount. And I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm just saying that that is something when we're considering the remodels or whatever else that we're trying to bring a better, like using a facility that we already have. Sometimes it's not just the cost of doing a remodel, but then it's another extra cost to do the upgrades of electrical or whatever. And that's part of why, I mean, even looking at the plans for the elementary school, it costs us a lot of money to update it up to what we need now. And that was just in written plans and not actual plans. And so I had no idea when I started these things just how layered all of this is, where it seems so simple in the face of it when you understand it is like a, what do you call it, iceberg. You know, you can just see this little tip and then it just keeps adding on. It's just harder and harder, and then soon you just have a new building because it costs more to redo than it would be just to have a new building. Now that's not always. I still think having an opportunity to look at buildings and to see what we can to improve it, to make that better, is always worth our time and figuring out. I think going through and looking at to see how safe our schools are so important, but it might be good to see. Anyway, I'll stop.
Shane, sorry if I missed this. How much does the radar X-ray wall seeing rebar machine cost?
X-ray machine.
It's all the same, X-ray, radar, whatever you want to call it. It looks into the walls. So we're on we actually lease the machine. We're on a group policy, so there's multiple contractors that lease this machine. We just request it from them. They charge us about $1,000 a month to have the machine. And for us to go look at it, obviously would just be our regular rates that we're already under contract for the district with, on top of that, so.
So you're just taking the picture and that's covered in our regular cost, but then we have to send it to engineering?
So,
or only if we were going to find a plan for replacement?
So what we would do is we would just go with the district folks and we would do a sampling of walls in the in the different buildings to get a good idea of, okay, that's unreinforced, that's got rebar in it. Then you guys could take that sampling and say, okay, we want to do a more detailed review, and that's when you would hire the engineers to come in and do that and give you a report.
But if you saw no rebar in any of your samples,
Yeah, then
it wouldn't be worth our time.
correct,
or money.
correct, and I wouldn't waste the money on the engineers if there was nothing there.
We have more questions on this topic?
I'm just thinking what Tiffany asked of us and how we think about this and move forward, and I'm trying to think about community outreach, and because the people that I talk to have been in support of the district's plan. Now, obviously, I haven't talked to 5,000 people. I talk to the people that I come in contact with, and so I think one of my frustrations and is I want to listen to the people. I want to listen to everybody, and I think sometimes we're not hearing everybody. And I don't know how to hear everybody because people are busy and have lives, and like the people I talk to on a one-to-one basis and things like that, they're, you know, they have kids in school and they care about education, but they're on the periphery and they're not delving into all the details and all the different things, and so they just want the best education and the best bang for their buck as well. I think we all do. And so when we talk about community outreach, I think that there are, like, I think community councils is a great way. They're in the schools, but again, I think that's a small sampling of what's really going on. And so I just don't, and I've thought about this for months, if not years. I mean, like, this is not a new, like, how do we, yeah, we all have, we know that. How do we talk to people and find out, and if they're like, I just don't want to pay any money, then I'm like, well, okay, I see what side you're on. Are you willing to talk about what options and what the needs are and how we can address these in an overall big picture kind of thing? And I think that there's people on both ends of the spectrum. People are saying, hey, I'm willing to pay whatever it takes because I value, I'm willing to do that, and I can afford it. And there are people that are like that. And there are people that are saying, I don't use the schools, it's not part of my, I'm not involved with that at all, and I'm just not willing to do anything. And then we've got this whole spectrum of in between that we want to help people understand, kind of like some of the things Stephanie says, what are the actual costs of some of these things? It sounds nice, like, oh, we can do this. Why can't you do it for this much? Why can't you do it for this much? Well, there's reasons why we can't do it for this much or this much. And all for creative financing, but when we're looking at our trim budgets, like, we can't just say, oh, let's just cut off $6 million and finagle it around. I mean, these are educators, what we're trying to do for these kids. So anyhow, I'm just supporting Tiffany and, like, we need to think about this. We need to really find a way to find out what's going on in the minds of our community members, but also we can't just say, you know, if I'm going to take an airplane ride, I'm not just going to say, well, I want the lowest price possible. I don't care how you build the plane. Like, I actually care that engineers knew how to build the plane. And so some of that, like, not that I don't respect our community's input, I do, but I also understand that there are realities of costs that we have, and if we can't clarify and explain what those really are in a way that people can understand them, and school finance is probably one of the hardest things to understand, this fund and that fund and this bucket, it makes it difficult. It makes it difficult to communicate, and I think that's one of the challenges we had with the bond, our original bond, and even with this truth in taxation. I think there was a lot of misunderstanding, misinformation, and I think even among the board, I think we don't completely understand everything either. I think we're still trying to learn how to go, what the best process is and what they're doing, and we're all at different levels. Like, Stephanie's brand new on the board, and she has done a fabulous job learning, and she has jumped in with both feet and is willing to listen and do and work hard to learn, and that is fabulous. And we are all trying to do the best we can with what we know, but again, I'm kind of in a really long way saying we need to think and we need to talk and we need to, and I'm a long-term planner. Like, I want to know, like, we want to get here, and what are the steps to get there? And I kind of feel like we're saying, well, let's just cover this, and let's just cover this, and let's just cover this, and maybe that's what we have to do. I don't know. But I want to have a plan, a long-term plan and steps to get there. That's just how my brain works and how I've lived my life. And so, because I think there's a lot of times we make small decisions that actually lead to long-term consequences that are not beneficial. So, that's enough of me.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments tonight about facilities? Thank you for saying that. I can see just by your comment that just community councils is maybe close, closes off as a starting point maybe, but I would really appreciate and respect each of your input on how we move forward with community involvement in a way that lets us make progress, right? That allows us to really have these decisions made by the dates we need to have it made, right?
Tiffany, would be nice for, I like the idea of having another meeting, but I think it would be, we were talking about.
Tucked into that.
Oh, okay, well, sorry. I'm clueless. Anyway, I think it's great to have another meeting, but I would like to be a little longer than a week probably. I would like to talk to a lot of people I know. I've heard a lot of things. I'd like to talk to more people. I think it would be nice for you to call all of us and get our own personal take on it. I think that you said that, and I think that's a good idea. Because I think it's easier to talk one-on-one to you than in the whole group together, to just give our honest opinions, what we think. I do think we need another meeting or two, maybe 3 or 4, I don't know, but maybe, and I know we have deadlines, I get that, but maybe in 2 to 4 weeks or something, after our next board meeting or something, after we've had time to talk to others. So, because we've had a lot to digest tonight, and there's a lot to think about.
Thank you. All right, do the rest of you feel good about that? No? You have a wedding, congratulations in 2 weeks. Grandkids this week, wedding next, they're in 2 weeks, that's okay, Brian?
The community folks that I've spoken with, in my opinion, it has nothing to do with trust. It has to do with their community members that don't want their taxes raised. I don't want my taxes raised. There are community members that don't agree with the plans that we've laid out. And so I think our best plan forward is to have some community meetings. We can get some community input, maybe some surveys. I don't think we need to have a meeting every week to figure it out. But I think we could put together a plan to get community input, get the best input we can. And it's evident by what has been presented here that the budget that this district runs is very tight. We're at the bottom of salaries almost in what we provide to new teachers. I don't think that's a good place to be. And so I don't think we can compare the operation of a K through 12 school district to higher education. You go look at the campuses and see how much money they have. Yeah, they could cut, save some money. I don't see anywhere in our budget that we could save money without cutting salaries, and we're already at the bottom. So I think our best plan forward is to get as much input from the community as we can, and try to put together a plan that they can buy into, and then present that plan for a vote in November, and let them ultimately decide.
I guess I want to say one thing, but I'm really scared to say it. But I want us to come across as, I don't know, just honesty. We're hearing a lot that we've lost the trust in the community. And it's been hard because a lot of the people I've talked to you know, you get them all over. Some people are so supportive. Some people just don't know what's going on and they just are grateful for whatever happens. And then you have, again, the people that say, I just don't want my taxes to go up, so I don't really care. I just don't want my taxes to go up. And I have people telling me, well, I don't have a kid at Garland, my kids do go to Garland, so I don't care if North Park, Lakeview, those elementary schools are struggling because my kid is fine. Or just they have these attitudes that I know that the trust has been lost, is what's been said, you know, from us to the public. But I'd also then ask the public to then show us that you can trust that we're trying to do what's best too. And I know that I feel like I'm going to be tarred and feathered after saying that one. But I really want people to be able to listen to the plan and to look at it from all perspectives. That's what I've been trying to do, is saying, okay, if you don't have somebody in that school that's getting affected, can you open your eye and see that things are not going well? I mean, we have an elementary school that is full, plus some that's running on 2 bathrooms. There's so many things that we need to do for our district that needs to be better. And I feel very positive going forward. I would love to see, like Brian said, having community meetings and having people invited to the community to be able to listen. If we had a really good presentation that actually does maybe a few pictures or walkthroughs of what the schools are, because I think there's a lot of distancing between people that are going to the schools versus the people that, you know, don't have a reason to go. I love visiting all the schools. Even this week, you know, visiting the high school, I got to go see some presentations, and it was just so good. And these kids are so energized and excited for the future, and they're doing such good things. But they do see that their school is lacking in some things, and we're all just trying to do the best that we can. And I didn't write out a statement, so this might not all come across as I mean it to sound. I guess I would love to see a presentation that shows what the plan is, why we're doing it, how it's going to benefit us in the long run. I know a lot of people are not happy with the added PE spaces, but that's also because isn't that state mandated? Like we have to have PE spaces if we're going to bring more students into a school. And I don't know. I would like to see a nice presentation that we can have as a community members come in and they can sit down and understand the information and be able to leave informed, so that they can be able to say to the people around them and like help them educate their friends as well. I think it's just, I feel energized that we are on rock bottom and there's only up from here. We can only get better, right? If we just we've got to step out of the box. We've got to start doing new things. I'm happy. I love meetings. I love sitting at Kent's. I will sit at Kent's and talk to anybody and show them plans as much as I can. I will go door to door and knock on people's door and say, do you have questions? And I'm happy as long as I have a bodyguard or somebody to help me so I don't, but I just think we have a lot of opportunities right now to engage the community because we haven't had a good success rate with that. So I just would love to see more ideas on how we can do more and step out of the box and just do better. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? All right, I will be, go ahead. Oh, you're looking at the schedule. Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is board meeting, regular board meeting.
And then we have 2 weeks before spring break starts, so maybe the 3rd or 4th week of March.
So maybe 3 weeks from now. Okay, keep that in mind. I will be contacting each of you. And I just have to say, I am so proud to be a part of this group of people. There's been so much criticism, and I just know, first of all, that the 7 of us here are not gaining a darn thing. Right? There's nothing to be gained from this. I appreciate that all 7 of us have looked into this matter with, I know we've had sleepless nights, I know we've had long, long days and long meetings and it's been on our mind and in our worries for months, years, as far as I'm concerned. And I just am so impressed with the work that you 6 people and myself that we're willing to put, and all of the criticism that's been received. I just want you to know I appreciate you so much, and I look up to each of you for your opinions, your thoughts, your knowledge. Each of us have different knowledge bases, and they all come into effect at different times, and it's really awesome to be a part of this, even though so many times I think, why in the world why are we doing this, right? It's for our kids, it's for the students, it's for our teachers, it's for our administrators and coaches and everybody that's involved with educating our kids they're doing so many great things in our schools, and we get to be a little tiny piece of that. And so thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. I'll be calling all of you, so think 3 weeks from now, maybe get that on your calendars, we'll shoot for that, okay? And we'll have a plan before that, obviously. But 2 weeks is board meeting. If you'll look at our agenda for tonight, there is a board handbook note. See that on C on our agenda for tonight. That is on our agenda for every regular board meeting. It's usually not on our work session, but we wanted it on here because we are going to start getting a better focus of that handbook and what our purpose is. For ourselves to be reminded, some board members, I don't know, when they talk about like the GO bond from 2009, who was here what board members were here in 2009 when that GO bond passed? Any of us? We're all new to that. So anyway, let's review that board handbook. So what I'll do is I was gonna start tonight, but just for time's sake, I will take that first board meeting in 2 weeks, and I'll take a section, and then each of us will take a turn and just do a brief synopsis, not just for us as board members to review, but for our public that cares, right? So they know what our duties are, what our code of ethics is, all of those things, okay? Yes.
I would like to make a motion that we move into closed session to discuss the character or professional competency of an individual.
Second that.
A first and a second, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Stephanie Phillips, yes?
Brian Smith, yes?
Karen Cronin, yes.
Julie Taylor, yes. Tiffany Summers, yes.
Danielle Wright, yes.
All right, thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's just harder to record audio in here. So I'm using the mic, then I can maybe pick up ambient sound. But this is the best way to get it right when it's recording. This is the best way for the people in the room to hear. I wish we could be one. Our new system is fabulous. Really good. So, yeah.
Did you say next week?
Sorry, yeah. Well, you gotta tie into them, and one way to tie into them is to use the Cisco cameras, which we took out of here, and we put in the E string. Right? And even when we did use them in here, they weren't that good. I mean, the built-in mic in my laptop and my phone is better than these. Yeah, so there's a lot to the system, and UEN is like, oh, did you know? Because I'm doing this box to capture the video.
Yeah.
If we're using the WebEx, we can capture it in the WebEx, right? Well, that's great, but nobody's ever said anything about how to do that. So I would love to be able to do that, but we don't. So
Are you talking about trying to set it up so we just have one mic instead of two?
mics in the ceilings.
Oh, yeah.
But they're not. There was an intention when this building was built to record audio.
Of people sitting around and.
I think mostly it was intended for the boardroom, just to record audio.
But it just doesn't work.
Nobody ever. I think they sat in a design meeting. This is just totally my hypothesis. They sat in a design meeting and said, "This is what we want in the building." So they designed and they built the building, and then never told anybody how to use it.
Oh.
I came 1 year, 2 years after this building was built, and I asked. Nobody knew anything about them. They made fun of them, but nobody knew in the tech department, let alone in all of the other things. And I've always said, what were they thinking when they designed that room?
Yeah.
What were they thinking? So I've done my own thing in there, and I love it. I love it. But you do have to consider that room as being alive. The minute you step in that door, you got to consider it being alive.
Yeah.
So USB used to have these in the ceiling.
The same kind?
Different kind, similar thing, and you have a light knowing they're picking up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But they got rid of it because you pick up audio.
Yes.
So they went to the mics only where you just have to push the button and it picks you up.
Yeah.
I never utilized them.
Well, and that's what our ceiling mic is now. The one we have in the boardroom picks up a lot. Isn't it amazing?
Yes, it is.
What would it take to not have to have two and at least have a mic that would work for both this and this?
So, like in the other room, I used to have the mixer. It means that I have to I have to put all these mics into a mixer, and then I tap into the mixer into here, and that'll do it. But where this is temporary, this is one night and 2 hours.
I see why you
Just-
did it the way you did it.
Yeah, this was just quicker and easier. I can't be here all night.
Yeah.
You
We
know?
could have used some duct tape.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about, So, Steve, I need to know something. The closed session is the closed session, and they're ending there, and they're not coming back in to make any sort of public or anything with the public meeting.
Yes, you're correct.